What is going on with these real estate lawsuits? If you've sold a home in the United States in the past 20 years, you've likely paid a total compensation amount, which went to the listing brokerage, and they paid a large portion of that to the brokerage of the other agent who represented the buyer. These lawsuits, one with a proposed settlement of $418 million, are arguing that the seller should not need to commit to amounts for paying both agents on the front end. The seller has not been required to pay the buyer's agent more than $1 in the past. However, if they paid less than the going rates, they knew that they might not get showings, as the buyer agency portion of the commission would be broadcasted to the MLS. So there was a concern that if the buyer agent compensation was too low, their house wouldn't sell. As a result of this proposed settlement, compensation rates for buyer agents can no longer be shared to the MLS. The buyer agent is required to obtain a representation agreement with the buyer explaining what the agent charges. The buyer can still ask the seller to pay the agent's fees, effectively rolling them into their offer. But the difference is that it would be on the buyer's agent to justify the rates they charge, rather than having their pay be pre-negotiated at the time of listing agreement by the listing agent. What will matter most to sellers is not whether or not they pay the other agent's compensation. What will matter most to sellers is their net takeaway. So buyers will be aware that the agent's fee is impacting the bottom line of their offer. As much as this doesn't help my industry, I do agree with it. The pay of a professional should be dictated by the value they bring to the table, not a number that was pre-negotiated by another agent. As a listing agent, when we get offers that have the seller paying the other agent's compensation still, I will encourage the seller to look at the net offer, because that's the most important thing to them. If the seller's net proceeds are not acceptable to them, I will recommend that they counter on the sales price instead of the compensation of the other agent, because that compensation is something that is negotiated between them and their buyer. Most buyers will not want to pay their agents out of pocket, so it makes sense to let them factor those fees into the offer and have the seller focus on the net amount. When we list homes in this new environment, our associations still allow us to include an amount for the other agent in the initial listing agreement. I don't recommend this. I would recommend only committing to the listing agent fee on the front end, as the pay of the other agent can no longer be published on the MLS anyway. I don't think it's fair to commit the seller to the amount for the buyer agent on the front end, because at that point we don't even have an offer. There are other brokerages taking the same stance, the largest one being EXP. I will stress we're in a slow market, and the best net offers for sellers will still likely have a substantial compensation request for the other agent. My experience is that most sellers are still very willing to compensate buyers' agents in this market. But my advice is to let the market dictate what you do or don't have to pay the other agent, rather than committing to it at the very beginning.